Alhamdulillah, assalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Dealing with Cult Member series, where I will be talking about various topics related to how to deal with, interact, and deprogram cult members. With that, let's jump right in. As mentioned before, I will try to cover any questions I received on the topic since the last video, whether those questions came up in the video comments or sent directly to me. So a YouTube user left a comment. His handle was Rajul-M51, said, in the midst of providing them with the info, we aren't encouraged to cut ties with them or not go to their janazah. Not gonna lie, by y'all promoting that and calling people munafiqs, y'all sounding like the ones y'all are quote unquote exposing. It sounds personal, like bitter baby mama vibes. Tighten up, fellas, inshallah. So it looks like this comment is in reference to a video we released about attending cult members' funerals. You can go right on our channel and see it. I will also post a link in the description of this video. So this individual makes a few claims. First, Rajul says we shouldn't encourage people to cut ties with cult members. Then he says we shouldn't tell people to not go to their funerals. He also accuses us, as in R2F, that we are telling people to cut ties, and he says, finally, that we are calling people munafiqs. The rest of what he says is just an emotional insult because he says we sound like bitter baby mamas, which really doesn't need to be addressed. So remember in the first video, I mentioned that it is very important to focus on knowledge. You can't get into this game with just your emotions. And this is exactly what this person is doing. You must have knowledge, which means you must get your facts straight. Here at R2F, we have never encouraged anyone to cut ties. And when we refer to cutting ties, we were talking about cutting family ties because those are the ties that Allah has commanded us to keep. Allah says in the 25th ayah of Surah Al-Ra'd, and those who break the covenant of Allah after its ratification and sever that which Allah has commanded to be joined, i.e. severing the bonds of kinship or severing family ties. And Allah continues and says, and work mischief in the land, them is the curse, and for them is the unhappy home or hell. So Allah curses you, and you will earn hell if you cut family ties unnecessarily. We have emphasized this over and over. In fact, this entire series is mainly for dealing with family members. So it is a false statement, lacking knowledge, to say that we have encouraged people to cut family ties. Now, if this person is talking about cutting ties with friends or other individuals who do not fall under the category of family ties or those whom Allah has commanded us to keep ties with, it's a different story. But we actually have never told anybody to straight out cut ties with this type of group of people either. We have only cautioned people in a manner that aligns with the Quran and Sunnah. So when dealing with friends or people that you are not mandated to keep ties with that are cult members, keep in mind two things. First, Allah says, O believers, protect yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is people and stones. Okay? This is in the 66th surah, in the 6th ayah, At-Tahrim. I mentioned this in the last episode. Our primary responsibility is to save ourselves and our family, not our friends. Secondly, specifically in regards to friends, keep in mind the hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, a person follows the religion of his friend. So each one should consider whom he makes his friend. This is a Hasan hadith according to Albani, and it's in Sunnah Abu Dawud. In regards to going to cult members' funerals, I'm not going to spend too much time on that because this was addressed clearly in that specific video. In short, if the cult member is not upon shirk or innovation, then assess the situation first to see if you can go to the funeral, and then decide if you should go to the funeral. If the cult member is upon shirk or innovation, then you should not go. And if you disagree with the numerous proofs provided from the Quran, the Sunnah, and the Imams of Islam, then that's on you. But here at R2F, we are only going to encourage what aligns with the Quran and the Sunnah. We are not going to encourage what aligns with your emotions. Finally, this individual accuses us of calling people munafiqs. I'm not aware of anyone on this channel calling anyone a munafiq. I do remember us pointing out different characteristics of people, especially people in cults, that align with the characteristics of munafiqs. But this is very different from actually labeling somebody munafiq. So I suggest for whoever left this comment to keep tuning into this series because it will be of great benefit to them, inshallah. Remember, keep seeking knowledge and try your best to control your emotions. Our emotions should submit to the Quran and Sunnah. We can't let our emotions override the facts nor prevent us from seeking the truth before we act. Next, someone reached out to me and mentioned that cult members, especially the younger generation, will be more receptive to this style of content as opposed to our other content on our channel that appears to like mock and make fun of cult members. So I just wanted to mention that our channel is full of various styles of content. Our most watched content is our live R2F show. The dawah given to cult members can be broken up into addressing two main audiences. The first audience is the group. This means addressing the cult as a whole, the whole group at once. The second audience are individuals. Addressing the cult as a whole is very different than addressing individuals. The group as a whole receives information differently than an individual would. We try our best to cater the content to the type of audience that will actually be watching. And you will see that the content meant for an entire cult group will be different than the content meant for an individual. This content here for this series is mainly directed to individuals, and specifically individuals who are actually outside of the cult and trying to help those still stuck in the cult. Finally, I received a request to address how parents should deal with children who are actually stuck in the cult. I will definitely cover this topic in this series, but I believe we will also be doing an R2F show later this month covering this topic, inshallah. So remember, if you have any questions, you can send them directly to me or email us at emailr2f@gmail.com, or you can post them in the comments of this video and I'll try to address them in the next video. Okay, now let's quickly recap what we talked about in the last episode. We talked about how this video series is to help individuals dealing with cult members and to teach people how to help cult members free themselves from a cult. It's very important to remember that the mission is to deliver the message. Although we want our loved ones to be guided, it is up to Allah, not us. Our only mission, our only objective is to deliver the message and provide the guidance. We cannot force them to take the guidance. Also, remember, we are doing this for Allah's sake. Everything we do has to be for Allah's sake, and there is great blessing in this work. Arm yourself with knowledge. Do not get into this work only armed with your emotions. Cult members function off of emotions and ignore knowledge. You must battle their emotions with knowledge. And when we speak of knowledge, we are referring to the knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah and the facts. Finally, I gave 3 points of emphasis. 1, correct your intentions, meaning your intentions have to be for Allah's sake, not for the sake of social ties or other worldly benefits. 2, protect yourself at all times. This means that you don't neglect your duty to Allah, yourself, and your family. Don't get lost. Don't get consumed. Don't let the cult pull you away from Allah. 3, have realistic expectations, meaning set your expectations for guiding people to a low level. Most will deny the guidance, but you can't let that discourage you from the noble work that you are doing or that you plan to do. Okay, so let's do a quick review of what this series, the entire series, will include. We're going to cover a number of topics, and this isn't all-inclusive, but it'll give you an idea of the type of things we'll be talking about. We will talk about the 4 pillars of dealing with a cult member, and that will be in this episode. We'll also talk about the types of cult members, the importance of an identity, and we'll have a show talking about understanding how to understand the cult group as a group. We'll talk about understanding cult brain. We'll talk about how to communicate with cult members, dealing with broken families, using family ties to actually help, and other resources that are out there that can help. We'll talk about developing a dawah strategy, and we'll also talk about what happens when a person actually leaves the cult. Like I said, I will cover various topics, and this is not all inclusive, and I don't have any specific order, but I believe the last thing that I'll cover in this series will be what to expect when someone actually leaves a cult. And maybe we can use that episode as a way to segue into another series specifically about what to do after leaving a cult. So for this video, I'm going to cover what I'm calling the 4 pillars of dealing with a cult member. Just like we have the 5 pillars of Islam and the 6 pillars of Iman, I am following the same theme by setting up 4 pillars of dealing with a cult member. If there's anything else you remember or take away from this video, at least take these 4 pillars away. These are 4 things that if you keep these in mind when dealing with any cult or cult member, you will be on the right track. So the first one, increase knowledge. Increase knowledge. I'm going to keep emphasizing this point. It's very important that you increase knowledge. In order to use knowledge to help a cult member, you actually have to have knowledge. So you have to constantly be increasing your knowledge. Knowledge is the key to all of this. Not only is it the key to helping a cult member, it's also the key to having success in your own life and in the hereafter. In the Quran, in Surah Taha, ayat 114, Allah commands us to say, My Rabb, increase me in knowledge. I believe is actually the only dua in the Quran where Allah commands us to ask for an increase in something. Not an increase in money, not an increase in life, not an increase in power. Allah tells us to ask for an increase in knowledge. There's also the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who said, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. This is in Ibn Majah and it's Sahih. There's another hadith where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, whoever travels a path in search of knowledge, Allah will make easy for him a path to paradise. People do not gather in the houses of Allah, reciting the book of Allah and studying it together, but that tranquility will descend upon them. Mercy will cover them, angels will surround them, and Allah will mention them to those near him. And this is in Sahih Muslim. So there are so many different hadiths and different ayats that we can use to show that there's such great benefit in seeking knowledge. And I'm specifically referring to Islamic knowledge because obtaining sound Islamic knowledge is going to be your best resource when dealing with cult members. Yes, having an understanding of psychology, counseling, good communication, interpersonal relationships, etc., these things help too. But if you study Islam, you will gain all that knowledge as well. So you must seek knowledge and you must seek authentic, sound knowledge that is in accordance to the Quran and Sunnah. Don't go studying a bunch of sectarian beliefs or Sufi practices. Stick to the basics. Also, this is very important. It must be formalized, meaning you have to start from the ABCs. If you come from a cult background, you have to start all over from the very beginning with your knowledge. You have to make sure that you get rid of all the false conceptions, ideologies, and other false beliefs and practices. You can't get into a deep conversation about Aqidah, for example, with a cult member when neither you nor the cult member understand the basics of Aqidah. And this mindset applies to everything. So that's the first pillar, increased knowledge. The second pillar, stay connected. Contrary to what some people believe, even looking at that comment I read from YouTube that I talked about earlier in this episode, you must remain connected to the cult member. So you can hear it from the horse's mouth. The general rule is that you do not sever ties, especially ties of kinship. Of course, there are exceptions, but we can't get too deep into the exceptions. In general, you must stay connected to the individual, especially family members, in order to help guide them. If you lose connection, it is very difficult to guide them. An exception would be if remaining connected to that individual threatens yours or your family's relationship with Allah. For example, say you have a brother who is in a cult, but every time that brother comes to your house, he starts recruiting your children to the cult. Well, you have to manage that relationship properly and protect yourself and your family. Remember, protect yourself at all times. Scenarios like this may require you to disconnect in a manner that protects yourself and your religion, but there are many ways to stay connected and also protect yourself. The third pillar, build trust. The reason why the person is in the cult is because the cult leader or the cult group has gained their trust. In many cases, they trust the cult more than they trust themselves, more than they trust their family, even more than trusting Allah and Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you have to find a way to establish trust and build upon that trust. If they don't trust you, then they won't hear you. Again, if they don't trust you, then they won't hear you. Any engagement you have with a person who does not trust you is a waste of time and will just be an argument. The person will argue and disagree just for the sake of disagreeing. But if you can establish a relationship of trust and work at increasing that trust, the cult member will turn to you when they run into contradictions or when the cult transgresses upon them. So how do you increase trust? First and foremost, you have to be sincere. You have to genuinely want to help the person. If you are engaging with a person and you have a selfish agenda, the person will consciously or subconsciously recognize this. You have to be truthful. You have to speak with knowledge. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. You have to protect them. So if a person wants to keep your conversations private, then keep them private. But most importantly, you have to remain firm in your commitment to Allah. You can't be wishy-washy. You can't have two faces. More than anything, the cult member has to trust that you are a person who is more concerned about your relationship with Allah than you are about anything else. Finally, the fourth pillar, take advantage of opportunities. You have to take advantage of opportunities to give guidance. Whenever an opportunity presents itself, don't let it pass. For example, maybe you are in a family chat room and the cult member posts some cult bullcrap. That is actually an opportunity for you to provide guidance. How you provide that guidance is another topic, but make sure that you provide something. It could be you outright rejecting what they are saying. It could be you posting the correct information according to the Quran and Sunnah. It could be you just asking some thought-provoking questions. There are a number of strategies you can use, but the point is to take advantage of the opportunity. If you hear the cult member complaining about some cult shenanigans, that is a perfect opportunity to give some dawah. Maybe the cult member just got dismissed from the cult. Take advantage. You can even create or manufacture opportunities. Don't underestimate even the smallest act of trying to guide somebody. I'll give you a real example. I was in a cult chat room and someone posted a message from the cult leader. And I simply put the poop emoji as a reaction to the post. And someone seen that and contacted me on the side. And the end result was a person being guided away from the cult. So, to review, the 4 pillars of dealing with a cult member. 1, increase your knowledge. 2, stay connected. 3, build trust. 4, take advantage of opportunities. So that's it for this episode. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Remember, if you have any questions, particularly about this video or any other topics, email us at email r2f@gmail.com. You can also leave a comment and we will try to address them during the next video. The next video, I'll be talking about the various types of cult members. So thank you for joining us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.